All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Coming right back in, top 10 wrestling matches of 2022. We finished 10 through 6. We're on to our top 5. Last finished off with Mr. Solis's number 6 being FTR versus the Briscoes dog collar match. My number 6 was Cody Rhodes and Rollins at WrestleMania 38.
And before we get going on this list, I want to go first because I've just sort of followed the pattern in my mind, and I want you to have the last word on your number 1.
All right, for sure, sir. So, starting off with you, what was your number 5?
My number 5, we getting silly again, Jack. Are you familiar with a guy named Zicky Dice?
I've heard the name on Impact, I believe.
He's a gross-looking fella with a bleached mullet, you know? I think he's like, big guy on the gimmick table, and, anyway, he put on a show WrestleMania weekend in Texas. It was called Zicky Dice's Trouble in Paradise 2. I never heard of Trouble in Paradise 1, but I believe this was the show where they were going to have a woman wrestle a bear. That may have been why I tuned in.
Wow.
But I'm not putting in the bear match. That was a bummer. Actually, it wasn't a bummer. Because guess what? The bear takes the mask off to reveal that it's the woman who Sarah Logan's ripping off.
Oh. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Her name's like...
I think it's Max the Impaler, I think it is.
Yes. So imagine, it's like, oh, look at this bear. It's not a bear at all. It's a person in a costume. But the person actually ends up being scarier than a bear.
Yeah.
Honorable mention goes to her. But no. My match from Zicky Dice's Trouble in Paradise is Mike Bailey. You know Mike, right?
Mm-hmm. Speedball.
He just got like this band lifted on his passport so he can come to America and fight. He fought Effie. You know Effie.
Mm-hmm.
In a submission match.
Oh, boy.
And it was, one of those matches where, Mike Bailey's a good wrestler and has no shoes. Effie is a substantial performer. And he went toe-to-toe with this guy. And it was a really exciting affair. Now, Effie's a guy who likes to push some buttons and make people feel uncomfortable. Jack, he wins the submission match. How? Jack, he's got him in like an ankle lock or something, but the ankle lock isn't what Mike taps out to. He starts licking his toes.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. I don't know what's more creative than Jericho tapping out to Claudio's big swing or that. And I don't know.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, and I was so excited because Effie had just lost to Jeff Jarrett on a big old show, Effie's been on I was reaching a point where I don't know if I'd seen the guy win, a big profile match. And Mike Bailey, he was all over the place WrestleMania weekend. The commentators are talking about it. He was a guy who had a match or two every day. Mm. And so to get that big old match against him in such an Effie way, I thought that was good character building too.
Yeah, that sounds real funny and entertaining. Oh,
that's my number 5.
All right. Well, my number 5, coming back with tag team wrestling. Another TV match. I have the Young Bucks going against and defending their AEW tag titles against Team Taz, Ricky Starks, and Powerhouse Hobbs, and Swerve in Our Glory on AEW TV. Specifically, I believe it was on Fyter Fest. I don't know what more to say. So after speaking about the previous match, and how much of a spectacle it was, allow me to show my bias for a bit with this one. I know it's a TV match, yes, but it features the Young Bucks, Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs, Swerve Strickland, and Keith freaking Lee. In no universe can I be wrong for including a match this high with these competitors in it.
No, sir.
The absolute chaotic but yet fluid wrestling in this match to me was just amazing. You get big man wrestling with Hobbs and Lee whenever they're in it. You get acrobatics with the Young Bucks and Swerve. And you get the excellent charisma and character work from Ricky Starks. 2 of my favorite spots of the year come from this match, where the first one is when Ricky and one of the Young Bucks are walking the ropes and then they start arguing with one another only to get dropped right on the middle. And then the second one is after they finish a spot, Ricky decides to have a pose down with the Bucks just for him to eat the double super kick from them right after. Very, very entertaining stuff, and the wrestling in it is so great. And I just remember watching this live, which added to it, watching it on the TV, watching it happen. So I didn't have the results spoiled for me. I got to watch it, and I didn't let the commercials and picture distract me. I made sure to put a paper up and solely focus on the match. Because I was like, Swerve and Our Glory is in this. I need to watch this team. Taz is in this. I loved both those teams. Funny enough, I don't think one of them obviously aren't together anymore, and it looks like Swerve and Our Glory is next.
Right.
But funny enough, I saw a lot of people, when looking back on this match, they claimed it was predictable, which I just kind of don't understand, because around this time, everyone assumed Swerve and Lee were going to break up because of their feud that they were having with Team Taz. And the Young Bucks, everyone thought they were going to face FTR at All Out for all the gold. So to play upon this, we see, the story that's been building all year long since they started tagging with one another. We see Swerve get the chance to cheat by using the tag belts, but he looks at Keith Lee, throws it down and says, no, I'm going to do it the honorable way that you've been trying to get me to do. And it almost costs them the match. We then also get a spot where Hobbs delivers 4 spine busters, one after the other, all of the rest of the 3 onto Keith Lee, who's laying on the mat. And then the finish even went over TV time, so it really added to the whole spectacle where it's like they're running long with this and they didn't cut a single second of it. And of course, bias, Keith Lee and Swerve end up winning the tag titles here, which was a very big shock because, like I said, people try and say it was predictable now, but I remember watching at the time, no one thought they were winning those tag titles that night.
Yeah, they were the ones you were almost certain weren't going to win because of the story they were telling.
Yeah. So, very great TV match. I have a lot of them on here, but I just can't help but put a match like that on here with such competitors.
These guys have been real generous with them good old matches on TV. Makes the guy think he should put his cable back on.
Yeah, oh man. Real great from there. I really enjoyed that match. Moving on to number 4. What is your number 4, sir?
My number 4, the ladies have entered the chat. For their only entry in my list. And, again, if I saw that New Japan show where Kairi Sane became the first ever women champion there, it might be here. I don't know. If I watch more Stardom, no doubt, Jack, I'd have as many as you have. But I've got one, and I went back and saw Bianca Belair's sort of, for 2022. It's been a lot of, it's okay matches, Mm-hmm. In the moment, you're like, well, that was serviceable, but which stand out? When's the next time she's going to have a Bianca Sasha match?
Yeah.
I pegged it at Hell in the Cell. It's a triple threat. It's Bianca Belair versus Asuka versus Becky Lynch. And all 3 ladies got their stuff in, to quote Brian Cage. And, I can't remember a whole lot about it, Jack, except that Asuka just probably never looks better. She's allowed to look, stiff, right?
Yeah.
Becky's doing that thing where she keeps trying to be sneaky, and throw one of them out. And she gets out-sneaked by Bianca Belair.
Yeah, I had this match on my honorable mentions as well. I think my only issue or reasoning for not including it, though, I don't know, looking back on it, maybe it's not that good, but I remember just remembering kind of how short it was. I think it was just over 10 minutes, I believe.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was very short, but I remember that being one of the highlights of that Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Really good stuff.
Yeah. So there you go. I ain't got much else to add to it. Bianca looks strong. This was before SummerSlam, so Becky's on her way, out of the heeldom. Yeah. She's really trying to rack her brain how she's going to get back into the title picture. And then there's Asuka, the perennial, professional Asuka, just showing everyone how it's done.
Yeah. Real good. All right.
You got a number 4. What is it?
My number 4. Okay, folks, this is the last of the TV matches. I won't have any in the top 3, especially because I think it's rightfully so. I think a TV match will always be limited by the fact of commercial breaks, and not being able to give you the full thing right there and there. Well, this is the last one. And I just couldn't help but put this match this high, just like the last entry, because it is still one of the craziest matches I've watched. Many preferred the match that would happen against the Elite, but this one, I just find it was so much better to me and was just so next level. I have the United Empire, Will Ospreay and Aussie Open, is it Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher? I believe that's their names. Hopefully I'm not getting that wrong. I believe so. Versus Death Triangle on AEW TV during the Trios title tournament. When they introduced those titles, they had this match. And because Will Ospreay and Aussie Open are coming in from outside the company, people were like, I don't really expect them to move on. And at the time, people were still speculating if Kenny Omega was coming back. So no one was expecting that, if Will Ospreay and them moved on, they can do a bit of teasing for the eventual Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega matchup. But we get this one where, okay, there's a lot of high spots, there's a lot of choreographed spots, but to me, it's still amazing time and time again, especially when I go back and rewatch it. And to many, this style of match and the titles themselves, because of how many titles appear on AEW TV, they may think it's a bit redundant, but to me, it just provides a style of wrestling that I just can't help but love because of just the chaos that ensues in trios styles matches. And I almost wish the matches for trios matches didn't have normal rules, not necessarily tornado tag style, but they've shown a bit of leniency to allowing all this chaos to occur where all six men are in the ring at once just going crazy and doing move after move. It can be a bit much at times, but this match kind of perfectly balanced it for me where, it's not just a bunch of high spots. There's still good wrestling in between. You have Pac hitting an insane top rope brain buster onto Will Ospreay. Penta hitting an amazing dive onto the outside. The reversals, the combos. Will Ospreay recreating his iconic moment with Kota Ibushi where he's Frankensteined off the top rope only to land on his feet and stare into the camera, but only to then turn around and I believe he eats a super kick or he gets poisoned Rana by Pac, one of the two. And then of course you have Kip Sabian returning and the interference in it to set up a title match at All Out, which was pretty unique, and they had teased him returning for a long time. And then the United Empire get the win to eventually, like I said, tease that matchup that is coming to Wrestle Kingdom between Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay.
Yes, sir. I saw a lot of the highlights of this match on Instagram via Reels, and and I can confirm it's explosive nature for a TV match.
Yeah, very, very chaotic, but I just loved it.
You were correct, sir. Aussie Open is Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher.
All right, just wanted to make sure I got their names right. Shout out to them. The real good match between these two trios.
Nice.
But we move on to number 3.
Woo! Here we go.
The top 3.
We're going across the Pacific Ocean, Jack. We're going to Japan for my number 3. It's Kenta versus Hiroshi Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom for the United States Championship in a no DQ match.
I remember.
And hard-hitting affair, I think, unlike New Japan style, right? Because these guys brought out all the toys, and they got dirty. I think, Hiroshi Tanahashi was built up as the ace. He's the hero, and he doesn't have it in him like Kenta does. Kenta's a big meanie. Kenta is going to hurt Tanahashi. And does Tanahashi have what it takes to come out on top? Well, he showed us all he does. And I will never forget Kevin Kelly in commentary just bigging up the fact that I think Tanahashi hates himself for what he has to do and what he's done. Because Kenta gets tore up. He's put on the shelf for a couple of months after this. And Tanahashi wins, but you don't look like no winner. Goodness, in the foray, Jack, he's not celebrating. He's not air guitaring. And that's the best part of a character that's like that. When he's not like that, you just read so much into it. But he's got the belt. He's all head down. Ref's trying to pick his arm up. He's like, what are you even trying to do? And just like that, again, the character development for Tanahashi in the winter months of his career, he's just still showing everybody how good he is. Yeah. And the match itself was incredible. There were tables. There were some Japanese tables, those tables?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there was an elbow off that ladder. Pretty sure.
Yeah, I think I can't remember if it was the elbow off the ladder or just like one of the spots where he gets hit with something, but Kenta got pretty messed up in that match.
Yes, he did.
And I remember, because you brought up the character work of Tanahashi, I think he said something along the lines of, I wanted to win, but not like that, after seeing the injury that happened to Kenta. So, real good character work out of that match. I remember that one.
And, I'm a guy who, can't think of a lot of Tanahashi matches that I cared about, Like his with John Moxley at Forbidden Door. It's the match ever. No one in a million years, but 1,000 monkeys on typewriters would have come up with Tanahashi versus John Moxley as the one we wanted to see. Golly gee. You remember it was supposed to be CM Punk?
Yeah.
It's me, Tanahashi, here to challenge your ace, CM Punk. Stop it.
Oh, man. I don't end up having a New Japan match on this. I almost had one, and it was Ospreay versus Umino at that New Japan Stardom collab event. Mm-hmm. It almost made the list, but I just quickly want to shout out that match. Number 3.
Do you know who Takeshita is?
Yeah, I didn't know about him until he popped up on AEW's TV, but
yeah, and he went and had this massive 2022 against your who's who of AEW's best and brightest, and I haven't seen any of them. Yeah, I hear good things.
Yeah, I saw his match against Hangman, and I could probably name more, but I just need to look at the list of matches he had. But yeah, he's pretty impressive. I'm looking forward to seeing, especially now that
And I bet at least one of his matches is on Dark, and I could have seen it, but I watched Dark.
Yeah. I'm excited for 2023, though, because now he's officially signed to AEW. He's officially moved over, so can probably see a lot out of him, and I'm excited for that.
I believe you owe me a number 3, Jack.
Yes. Number 3, following suit, taking a trip across the Pacific Ocean. We're coming back to Japan. No surprise again. We're back here in Stardom. This one was very recent. I think it was last month. It was here. No. Wait. I believe it was last month. It happened right before the New Japan Stardom event because Kairi wrestled back-to-back that night. And but this one comes from the form of their main title, the World of Stardom Championship. Champion Shuri defending against Utami Hayashishita. And to me, this is my redemption from last year because these two women had 3 matches last year. One that ended in a double KO, one that was their part of their tournament match that ended in a time limit draw to help set up what would eventually be their final match, which ended up with Shuri ending Utami's reign at 409 days as champion. And I'll give myself a pass for that last match because it happened 3 days before the year ended. Are we supposed to wait till the very end, January 1st to come out with a top 10 list? I couldn't help but, not include that, of course. But the previous 2, I have to redeem myself because they would have likely made my list. But here we are again with Utami again making my list. I believe 3 years in a row she's made my top 10 list, slowly cementing her status as one of my favorite women's wrestlers to watch. And Shuri is no slouch herself because these two women absolutely battered the hell out of each other in this match. Strikes, kicks, suplexes, all the big moves. The downside is it's a bit predictable because another one of Stardom's competitors, Julia, former stablemates with Shuri, won their tournament that gets them a guaranteed title match at the end of the year. And, she's going to challenge Shuri. And so it's like the match is a bit predictable because the title's not going to swap hands right before this big match that they're setting up. But
yes.
To me, it's still... Oh, and the other thing was, at this point in time, Utami hasn't really had much momentum. She hasn't really been doing much this year. She's obviously had matches and stories, but nothing to the level of her being a former world champion in this promotion. So... you have those two things kind of working against it because going into it, you're like, this is going to be predictable. You already know who's winning. But that doesn't take away from the match. There's a big air raid crash onto the apron, which is pretty brutal. Utami, again, having bunch of just beautifully looking release suplexes that I have to give credit to them. Just all the stuff that they do together is real good, and they nail everything down to even facial expressions, where whether it's someone's in a submission and they literally look like they're desperate for air, or points where Utami's going for these suplexes and Shuri is literally like fighting for her life, holding that rope not to get suplexed. Shout out to Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, because I think these two are like them. They're wrestling soulmates in the sense of that anytime the two of them just go at it, they're destined to go at it forever. Anytime the two of them go at it together, they literally just go all out and throw all the moves. And the one thing that I liked was when it comes to Stardom, there's a language barrier for me. It's a different language, and though they have like subtitles for the promos when they upload the shows, it's still like hard for me to keep up with the story elements. But it's the subtle things that they do that help me get into the matches and learn their stories. One thing is the presentation. I've always said that Stardom wrestlers always have this unique look to them, this unique presence because of the gear they use. And the example here is Utami actually goes back to her old gear from last year when she would face off with Shuri. So she had a different style of gear. She brings back the old one for this match, and it's a little detail, but it really popped me. And just real hard-hitting stuff, and one final defense for Shuri, because it's more than likely she loses that title. It's still unpredictable. Who knows? You could always swerve the fans and be like, the champion retains. But it adds another, big name to her defense list, and hard-hitting affair.
When was that match, Jack?
Let me check. I think it was last month.
I see.
I know it was very recent.
Okay.
Stardom Gold Rush.
Because it sounded like the stablemate that won the tournament that got the championship match, she hasn't gotten that match yet, right?
No, this happened November 19th, 2022.
Okay, got it.
And much like how I mentioned with the third match from last year, the match between the former stablemate is scheduled like the last week of December. They have like a year-end show at the very last week.
I got you.
And so it's like, I won't wait to make a top 10 list till then. It's Stardom's fault for having an event so late into the year.
Goodness gracious, but you tell a compelling story, Jack. I haven't seen a Stardom match, but I feel like I have.
Yeah.
Certainly feel like I'm missing out. I've certainly got a case of the, fear of the FOMO,
Yeah. I think it's on like one of the podcasts where it's like I mentioned I started watching in 2020, but it was like casual viewer stuff. Even last year, it was casual viewer stuff where, I tune in and all that. But like this year has been the year I've been most on top of it, where like I'm just
nice. And they don't have any English commentary, huh?
No, they do not. That's the one downside.
Wow. But still, just to pick up as much as you have, right? Based on body language, it's like, it's like art. It's like math, the unspoken language, the universal language.
Yeah. And I'm spoilers. There's one more match from Stardom, and
you got two more spots, and one of them's filled with Stardom, huh?
Yeah. But
I got it.
Well, number two.
There ain't much to say about my number two because it's already been said. But I gave the penultimate spot on my list to Cody Rhodes' return home to WWE where he belongs when he fought Seth Rollins at night 1 of WrestleMania 38 in Texas.
Yeah. The spectacle behind it was just amazing. It cannot be denied.
And the wrestling was so good too. There was so much of it. They were given their time. They fought 3 times, right? And a lot of people would justifiably give their trilogy like an extra nod to the Hell in a Cell match because Cody went in with one pectoral, like one intact pectoral. But I think the first one was better than all 3. And just again, the revelation that Cody Rhodes is back that he left that company. Remember how many people were saying it was a work, that he was like doing the contract negotiations with Tony Khan? And how many people have said he's the smartest man in wrestling to leave before, everything went awry over there in Jacksonville?
Yeah. And I think, another thing that I forgot to mention in my analysis that added to it was Rollins, we give a lot of credit to Rollins' attire this year, where he's been very creative or very story-based, where like the Hell in a Cell match, he came out in polka dots as a nod to Dusty to get in Cody's head.
Right.
How does he give fans the subtle hint of who the opponent is going to be the night of? He shows up in an attire that is very Ric Flair-esque, with the Ric Flair sort of like coat and all that, to sort of give you the hint that like, yeah, you know who's coming. This is my little way of confirming it to you guys if you have any doubts so far.
That's interesting. I didn't think that at all as like a little subtle nod. I thought that was just Seth being Seth. And he got into Becky's stuff.
No doubt.
What was the last thing I wanted to say about Cody? Oh, it's wild too, Jack. Like, it's been like a solid 2 years of AEW going, look who else is here. Look who else we signed. Look who else we got. Look who else showed up. Right? It's been like a real solid 2 years of nonstop. And it won't stop, Jack. Just this last week, Trent Seven's like, I'm here now too. Like, you don't have Miro on your hands that you don't know what to do with. What are you going to do with Miro? We're going to sign Trent Seven. Come on, Jack. Make it make sense. All that to say, what does WWE do in response? They sign one guy and they make it the absolute talking point for the entire year. And guess what? They said, you know what? If we even think about signing somebody else from that company, it's going to be the second talking point of the second half of the year. And all anybody's been able to talk about is where is William Regal going to go?
Yeah, definitely, some very strategic stuff from WWE side. All right.
Let's go. We got number 2.
All right, let me just...
What time is it?
We have 17 minutes and 50 seconds. So, this one won't be as long as my number 3 or my number 1, but it's still a match that I think is deserving of top 2. And truly, if I'm being honest, my top 3 can be in any order because I just struggled so hard with this. But I think I'll give the slight edge to this match over my number 3 just because of the story in it. October 12th, 2020, Max Caster and Anthony Bowens are thrown together and form the Acclaim on AEW Dark. They're pretty much a Dark exclusive team and mainly enhancement talent. Caster's raps, I think it was last year, eventually get the team into some hot water at one point, and it almost looks like it's the end of them. And they don't even start getting consistent TV time till late last year. And yet, they have organically grown into one of the most over acts in wrestling. Their growth, natural talent, and overall charisma to me is just unmatched. And the match that proved it to me was the Acclaimed going against Swerve in Our Glory at AEW All Out this year.
And is that when they won the titles?
It is not, which is why it knocks it down to number 2.
Oh, dang! That's right. They win it on TV.
Yeah.
This was the match before that, though, huh?
Yeah, this was the match before, and, that crowd was hot for them the entire time through, and, kudos to Swerve in Our Glory for acknowledging where this crowd's heart resided in, because they say, hey, well, if you're so over for this team, let's start leaning into the heel tactics. And Swerve really started leaning into the heel tactics. You start off with some impressive wrestling, but as the match goes on, the story gets, revealed. And it's that at one point in the match, Anthony Bowens hurts his leg and instantly becomes the target for Swerve and Lee. They start targeting that leg like it's no one's business. They start working it, and it allows for these massive moments of momentum for both members of the Acclaim, where you have Bowens working from underneath, hitting these big moves just to try and get the tag in. And when he finally does, you have Caster having to carry this team to victory through his moves, He even lifts up Keith Lee for a huge AA that is just absolutely crazy. And then there's also the spot where the two men work and get a suplex off the top on Keith Lee, you know. And there's so many moments where they make you think they're gonna pull it off, especially because there's so many times they tease this dissension with Swerve and Our Glory. But like I said, that's what keeps it at number 2 for me, because I understand why they made the decision. But man, I just think it would have been insane to hear how this crowd would have exploded that night had they won it. They still won at Grand Slam, and you got to hear the crowd. But I think it would have been even better and bumped this match to number 1 if they got the win.
Why didn't they do it? Why didn't they pull the trigger?
You know, it's funny. I don't know why. It's looking back, you don't know why, and it's funny because during that cursed press conference after All Out, they even asked Swerve and Keith Lee should an audible have been called, and they're like, are you really asking us, the champions? Like, they stayed in character with it. They were like, are you really asking us, the champions, that we should have lost this match? But it was more so directed at Tony Khan, and you're just like, yeah, maybe an audible should have been called there, because while the pop was good at Grand Slam, I don't think it would have been anything compared to this night. But yeah, it gives, you know, it allowed for the story to kind of continue on, but I don't know. Like I said, it bumps it down to number 2 for me, because it just would have been absolutely insane to hear the pop they would have gotten that night.
Really exciting to see Swerve and Our Glory appear multiple times on your list and across both of our lists, sir.
Yeah. I think I mentioned it like earlier in the year at one point, and their match at Full Gear to cap off this trilogy with the Acclaim cements it for me. It's unpopular, sure, and it makes me look like a hypocrite for all the times I've ragged on WWE for throwing together tag teams. But Swerve and Our Glory to me is tag team of the year because of just the plethora of insane matches they've had that I've just enjoyed time and time after again.
That's funny. I thought you would give tag team of the year to the Acclaimed and their meteoric and organic rise.
They're right there at number 2, I'd say.
FTR probably have some stake to the claim, you know, with all their belts and all that jazz.
Oh, man, real good stuff from this match, though, but bumps it down to number 2.
Are we down to the number 1, and do we have the same number 1?
I don't think we have the same number 1.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay, then I'm going to give you my number 1, and you're going to tell me it's something else. And you're going to tell me that this match never showed up on your top 10 at all. Oh, here we go. Mr. Solis's number 1 match of 2022 happened in Wales at Clash of the Castle for the Intercontinental Championship. It was Sheamus, flanked by his Brawlin' Brutes against Gunther, and the reanimated Imperium. And that was my match of the year, Jack, and all the slaps and all the pink chests and all the death and all of the kicks and all of the stiffness and all of Europe getting behind Sheamus. You know, they knew that Roman was going to win because they said, Sheamus is going to be our guy. Because I think they thought Sheamus was going to bring it home. They were like, no, Drew's not going to beat Roman, but Sheamus might beat Gunther. Little did they know how much power Triple H was going to take from Vince McMahon. If this was a Vince McMahon run show, Sheamus would be your reigning Intercontinental Champion, and people would have walked away from that match going, you know what? I'm not even mad. But Gunther, on the tear that he's on, having his historic and star-generating TV matches, destroys the veteran. Slowly but surely. That's what this was, Jack. Old versus new. I still got it versus I've got it now. Whatever you think you got. And a testament to Sheamus's badassedness. Banger after banger after banger.
Yeah. I won't put that on me for forgetting about that match. I obviously remember it now, and I could probably slot it in, especially above...
you think you can replace a Stardom match with it, Jack?
I think I could replace the Hangman Danielson match with it. I think I could probably replace... it could be somewhere on here for sure. I remember that match, yeah. Very hard-hitting affair. The revival, if you want to say, of Gunther's main roster. I mean, well, he's been doing pretty well. I know a lot of people were upset with the name change down in NXT, but he's been on a run this year. And so has Sheamus.
Yeah.
Sheamus has really gotten people behind him.
Mm-hmm. But they said, you know what, Giovanni Vici? Come on over here. Get your black tracksuit on. Oh, and when Marcel Bartel, I don't know his name anymore, when Ludwig, what's his name, did his intro, I almost broke out into tears. Because he gets such a big old pop and circumstance hype for Giovanni Vici. What a swerve.
Yeah.
That whole crowd was in it. That whole crowd was like everything you're told a European crowd is like.
Yeah, definitely a really good event. Definitely one of the best pay-per-views from the year. Had a lot of great matches on it. You already know, if Drew had won, that would have been somewhere on this list. But at the same time, that doesn't take away from that match being good. Definitely doesn't take away from Gunther and Sheamus having an absolute banger. And much to the claim that you made during last year with your number one, just like with Danielson and Suzuki, Sheamus being as pale as he is just adds to that match because, oh boy, does he get super red.
Super red.
Man.
Dang. So what is your number one then, Jack?
My number one with 8 minutes remaining. So, as I've mentioned throughout this list, I only had one WWE match. I've had a plethora of Stardom and AEW stuff. I had one Ring of Honor. Many people probably are like, "Oh man, he's a shill for one company over the other. He's a shill for this and this. He's biased towards AEW over WWE." And the one thing I will say is that, I enjoy all these different companies. I enjoy all these different matches. But to me, if I have to show my bias, if I have to have a bias towards one company, it's towards Stardom. I just can't help it. I've fallen in love with this small Japanese women's only promotion, and it's like, I don't know what it was. I mean, I don't want to offend certain people because I'm not going to, make it sound like the women here in the West aren't capable of having match of the year contenders. Bianca has been on such a tear since her main roster debut in 2020 and has had amazing matches after amazing matches. Jamie Hayter and Toni Storm would have ended up on my top 10 had it had a better ending. Like I think I had previously explained to you, I just didn't like the whole thing where they made it seem like Jamie Hayter was going to finally get it done without any interference from Britt Baker just to win the match because of Britt Baker's interference. And I get the story they might want to tell from that, but would have been a lot more interesting. But Stardom, to me, I end up loving all their matches, and maybe it's because of the fact that, it's dedicated to the women, so their stories are able to, develop more uniquely. Mm-hmm. Whereas the women here in the West, they share the brand, so they don't get as much time devoted to them, and that's to no fault of their own. But Stardom, for me, definitely has my bias, and it has my number one pick as we throw it back to a match that happened, I believe it was in March. It's somewhere during like that late winter, springtime. I can't remember the exact when it happened. And funny enough, I didn't watch this match until I had to do a video on one of the competitors in it that I mentioned was having a case for Wrestler of the Year for me just because I was blown away with a lot of her matches. I have Azumi versus Starlight Kid for the High Speed Championship. And the High Speed Championship in Stardom is not necessarily a cruiserweight title, but it's a title for the competitors within that promotion who work, in the name title, a higher paced, higher speed type match. And for the most part, the matches obviously can go longer, but they fit so much into matches that only go like 10 minutes. And to many people, they'll hear that and be like, oh, so it's a spot fest. It's like this and this. There's not much story. This match, to me, I have that at number one because of just how complete it is with everything that goes into it. Mm-hmm. So, like, the story, the build-up, the wrestling itself, there's limb work in this match, to drive a story in it, but it became the focal point of this video for me. And so the story going into it is that Azumi and Starlight Kid entered Stardom around the same time. Azumi right now, I think, is like still like 19, 20, and Starlight Kid's like 20, 21, 22, around that age range. But they entered in when they were like in their teens, you know, and they've been working their way up from the very start. And since they entered around the same time, they've always been compared. And they both started off, and you know, Azumi is still kind of, you know, white meat baby faces, they say, you know, like they're your typical baby faces. But last year, Starlight Kid, or was it it was either last year or 2020, Starlight Kid turns heel and joins the heel faction in Stardom. And throughout this entire time, they're being compared to one another. And Starlight Kid has always had the advantage. She's had the advantage in their singles matchups when they've gone against each other one-on-one. And she won a title before Azumi did. But then they made it a competition to see who could win the high-speed championship first. And Azumi was the one who won it first. Starlight Kid would win it last year in 2021. But she didn't beat Azumi for the belt.
And sounds like, what if The Rock and Triple H's relationship in 99 we're told again 20 years later?
Yeah. So, what's it called? Oh, God. But, so, the point that leads up to this match is that one of Azumi's stablemates turns heel and joins the faction that Starlight Kid is in. And, you know, they basically make her life hell. And that's what leads to this match happening. And so, in every defense, Starlight Kid has come out with a custom mask symbolizing her opponent. And when she's beating them, she's put the mask on them as a way to humiliate them, you know. And getting into the match itself, it's very fast-paced and WCW Cruiserweight-esque in the sense of, like, they're going, you know, right there, wall-to-wall, going super fast. But that still doesn't stop the parts of this match that aren't just fast-paced offense. There's a lot of good chain wrestling and counter for counter. You have a lot of aerial moves. They even work on the outside, you know. And Azumi, despite being this very aerial wrestler, still has a grounded and limb-based offense to her, where a lot of the times her finishes in the match are actually from like her armbar submission. So she's constantly working Starlight Kid's arm this match, and Starlight Kid is constantly targeting Azumi's back to kind of limit, you know, any pressure she can give to her from the aerial offense. There's top rope maneuvers. There's counters into submissions. I want to say there was a Spanish fly in this match. There's a lot in it, and it's all crammed into like less than 15 minutes, pretty much.
Dang.
But Azumi gets the win with this like brutal arm-based submission, you know, to show that like, you know, she has that submission-based offense. That was the story of the match, was working over that arm. And the part that just really, you know, added to it is the character work demonstrated from these two again, where after the match, after she's lost, Starlight Kid goes, sits in the middle of the ring, and gives Azumi the mask that she had designed for her, because she thought she was going to beat her and continue her tradition. But so she gives it the mask, and she's like, just do it. But Azumi refuses, and instead they just give a little fist bump, and then Starlight Kid taps the belt to basically say, hey, our journey together isn't over. We're eternal foes after all. We're destined to do this over and over because we're always being compared to one another.
Wow. Well, you know what, Jack? Of all the Stardom matches you described tonight, this one had the most poetic ending of them all. And I think a fitting ending to our top 10 podcast episode.
Yeah. A great year for wrestling. A great year all around, from promotion to promotion. You know, great stuff that I'm sure anyone can find anything to enjoy. You know, whether it was down in NXT, up on WWE's main roster, AEW pay-per-view or TV, Stardom, New Japan, wherever around this globe, there's a lot of great wrestling. But with that being said, and with about a minute remaining, I've been Jack, joined by my fellow guests,
Mr. Solis.
Thank you all for joining for this episode. We will likely not see you till the new year, where we cover Royal Rumble, because as far as I remember, I don't think Day 1's happening this year.
But AEW at the Forum certainly is.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. We definitely might have a show planned for that. Excited to see that. But as always, thank you all for joining for this episode. Until next year, and remember, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you, and we'll catch you on the next episode.